Rest in peace, Kim Jong-un. What I'm about to tell you happened a few days before Christmas. But first, let me give you a little background. I'm currently a freshman in high school. It's a pretty big school with tons of classrooms, a library, and a huge gym. It's about 15 minutes from where I live, because I live in a neighborhood in the middle of the forest. I don't really know anything about the school, except that it was built in 1957, and that the basement was used as a hospital during the Civil War. So as I said before, it was Friday, the last day of school before Christmas vacation. Every Friday, me and my best friend Vanessa have guitar lessons. I didn't really feel like going, because I had extra classes today, and I was really tired. I decided I was going to call my dad, so he could pick me up early, but it was a little too late, because our class was already starting. After the whole thing was over, it was already 5 p.m., so it was already dark outside. And to make things worse, there was a huge snowstorm. I felt horrible and had a really bad headache. All I wanted to do was go home, take a shower, and go upstairs to my room and read a book or something. It wasn't until I was packing my guitar that I realized I had lost my phone. Me and Vanessa were walking through the huge empty school. Vanessa was calling my number, and I was telling myself how stupid I was. There was almost no chance of finding it. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Anyway, we found the phone, somehow, miraculously, in the cafeteria, 15 minutes later. After we found the phone, we had to walk downstairs because the cafeteria was on the very last floor. Most of the lights were turned off, so the whole school was dark and creepy. As we were walking down the stairs, I had the feeling that someone was behind me, or stalking me, or something of the like. One time when I turned around, I swear I saw a little blonde girl looking at me. I tried to convince myself that there was a mirror there, and that it was only my reflection. But I have black hair, and what I saw was blonde. And it was almost as if the girl was glowing. We got really freaked out by this, and ran down the stairs as fast as we could. My dad worked late today, so he couldn't pick me up. Thankfully, Vanessa's mom offered to drive me home. After all, we live across the street from each other. The snow was really falling down hard. Vanessa's mom dropped me off near the driveway. Normally, I'm not scared of the dark, but the blonde girl creeped me out so much that I was running so fast that I didn't even bother to close the driveway gate all the way. Once I was in my yard, I felt safer, and I slowed down a little. I could hear my golden retrievers barking inside. Our blue minivan was in the garage, and there was a silver Toyota parked in the driveway, meaning that my grandmother had already arrived from Syracuse. I looked up at the house and noticed that the lights were on in the upstairs hallway, in the kitchen, and I could also see Christmas lights and shadows in the living room, meaning that everyone was home. After I took a shower, changed, and ate dinner, I went upstairs to my bedroom and turned on my laptop. Downstairs I could hear my golden retrievers barking, and then my mom and grandmother talking. "I just don't get it," I heard my mom say. "I know. Who would go for a walk in this kind of weather?" said my grandmother. I set my laptop down on my bed and looked out the window. All I could see was the forest around my house and the cars parked in the driveway. So I walked downstairs and asked them what they were talking about. But after a few seconds, the answer was obvious. There, walking down the dark road in the snow, was the little blonde girl I had seen earlier today. My scary experience happened during my last year in high school. As a tradition, during Christmas in our school, my teachers organize caroling to raise funds for some of the school's activities. We go house to house, sing Christmas songs, and the house owners give us some money, but no obligation. Caroling session is normally done at night. Just to give you an idea of my location, we are in a countryside. The roads are not cemented, no street lights, houses are far from each other, and rice fields, lots of it. At night, people are normally at home, so you can either hear the crickets or the dogs. So this one night of our caroling, about 12 of us are in the group, one teacher and the rest are my classmates. We started around 7 or 8 p.m., and since our meeting place is at my teacher's house, we started our caroling at nearby houses. We were just walking to go from one place to another. About 2 hours passed, and it's also getting late at night. We reached this place with a particularly old big tree just around the corner of a street. I heard a lot of ghost stories, especially the white lady. Before we arrived there, we walked about 15 minutes where there's nothing except rice fields. We walked past this tree, and we all became very scared. But luckily, none of us felt anything weird. So, we continued walking, but still have an eerie vibe. I only saw 2 or 3 houses in the area with lots of big trees. We stopped in the first house and started singing our Christmas song. After a while, we saw one of our classmates crying without any reason. Some of them tried to calm her down, but she can't be stopped. She didn't say anything, just crying, and it's getting even louder. Moments later, she looked at me and told me not to look at the tree, the one she began to point at. She said she saw a capre with red eyes, smiling and looking at me. Capre is a big man with hair all around its body like a monkey, and it lives in a tree. It usually smokes tobacco at night and smells like fish sauce. At this time, I felt super scared and almost fainted. I was also crying that time, and I didn't dare to look at that tree, not even a glance. My group decided that we leave that place immediately, so we walked back and spent the rest of the night at our school, which is about a 1.5 hour walk. At the school, we all stayed in one room on the second floor. It's an ordinary classroom, so each of us chose the most comfortable place to sleep. Surrounding this classroom are big trees. There are glass windows on one side of the wall. In the middle of my sleep, I was woken up because my whole body in my chair was shaking, and was shaking very strong. I know I was awake and it wasn't a dream. I didn't open my eyes because I was so scared. It lasted for about 3 minutes. My arms and legs are so numb. I just ignored it and fell back to sleep later on. Until now, I'm still unsure what happened that night. I know people have told many ghost stories, and most people will not believe them. Frankly, I was one of those non-believers when I was younger. Yeah, my family would watch paranormal movies and out-of-this-world kind of things. But who would think that something like that could possibly be real? Watching these shows do not help you when someone you love dearly passes away. I'm the second oldest in my family, and I never would have imagined the feeling of losing a close relative so soon, let alone my own father. A few days after my 12th birthday, in December 2002, my father became very ill. He had suffered 2 heart attacks within a year. We had just visited him in the hospital because it was Christmas Eve. All of my siblings and my mother were sitting by his bed, and he was sitting there, stoic. Of course, we gave him hugs and kisses, but he whispered in my ear to stay behind for a minute, so I did. After everyone left the room, all he said was, "I love you so much, my girl. Stay strong for them, okay?" And I nodded. The next morning, Mother went to visit Father at the hospital. In my mind, I was thinking, yes, Dad is going to be home for Christmas. I looked at the clock, 5:30 a.m., right on the dot. Phone rings. No name, and no number listed. Still, a curious child, I answered the phone, even though I was told not to. It was Dad. He was laughing. He said, "My girl, I love you. I love your sisters and your brother, and of course your mother. Tell them that, my girl. Love you, and I'll see you later." And he hung up. I never got to even say one word. He talked, I listened, and that was that. Mom walked in, holding a bag, crying so hard her face was red. She said that Dad passed away this morning, Everyone started crying right away. I didn't. I said, "No, he didn't. I just talked to him." She explained to me he did, and what had happened, even down to when he took his last breath, which was at exactly 5:30 a.m. It took me weeks to comprehend what had happened. I couldn't tell my mother, again, about the phone call from him. It was beyond too devastating for her. I sat with my father on the last night of his wake. I talked to him and asked him why he left, why he called home and told me what he told me, and last, why didn't he let me say, "See you later" back? I know he would never be able to answer me, but still, I had to ask him. I adjusted the items we all put in his casket: his favorite Minnesota Vikings cap, his sunglasses, pictures we drew for him and pictures of us, and of course, my mother's letter she sent with him, propped neatly in his casket. The next Christmas, my mother had went all out. She bought everything we asked for, even though I told her I didn't want anything. I opened all my gifts, except for one, admiring the bow, the paper, and how neatly it was wrapped. My mom anxiously said, "Just open it already." I did, and it was a camera. Kind of odd, because I just told her the day before that I wished I had a camera to take more family pictures. I put the battery and memory card in it, made it ready for picture-taking time. At that exact moment, I remembered that TV show we watched when Dad was still here. He laughed at the episode because they were taking pictures that turned off electronic devices that had screens on them. He said it was the dumbest thing he had ever seen. I told him it was cool, because of the dots and the shadows they were getting. But when they uploaded these pictures into the computer, it would turn the whole thing off, and it would no longer work. "It's fake," he said. I thought about trying it, because it was exactly 1 year from Dad's passing. I turned the TV off, and everyone was looking at me and getting mad, because they were watching a Christmas movie. I pointed the camera at the tree and TV. One flash. Orbs were everywhere in the picture. No shadows, or anything that I could see on the camera screen. Nothing that looked like my father, just orbs. Second picture. I pointed the camera at the TV screen. Like I said, it was already turned off. All you can see on the camera screen is a flash on the TV, and that was it. All my siblings and even my mother told me it was a dumb idea and to turn the TV back on, so I did. The next day I wanted to see the pictures in the computer, blow up the pictures to see if I caught anything. I sat down and plugged my camera in, and to my surprise, the first picture I caught a shadow behind the tree, along with the orbs that were floating around the tree. I showed my mom and siblings. They laughed and said it was fake. The second picture, I magnified the pic on accident, and it zoomed into the middle of the picture, under the flash. I jumped out of my chair and ran to grab my mom. She came to the computer, and she saw it. Right when she got close enough to the computer, she started crying. I caught a perfect picture of my father's face, right under the flash on the TV screen. I showed my siblings this picture, and they all had tears in their eyes. And that was when I reminded them of that phone call from him, exactly 1 year before. I said that now they can believe me. I don't have to hide the secret anymore. They hugged me and said it was the best Christmas gift I'd ever given. Of course, the next morning, our computer had broke before I'd even gotten time to email it to my other family members. I went to look at my camera and it was hot. Batteries were taken out and the memory card was literally fried. I couldn't believe it. Brand new computer and camera, broken in a day. To this very day, my siblings and I remember and talk about it as if it were just the best thing, which in our case, it is. We no longer have our mother as well, and more stories will be written about them both. My parents always told me that when someone passes away, they never die, they rest. And you're not ever supposed to say goodbye. It's always, "See you later." Rest in peace to my wonderful father. This one will always be his story, but ours to share. About 8 years ago, when I was 5. I am now 13. I lived in this house, which was believed to be haunted. Since I was so young, I didn't really believe this stuff, because at that age, kids sometimes think what people tell them are made up, just a joke to scare you. It was Christmas Eve, and everything was normal. I went to bed early so that Santa could come to my house faster. I laid awake in bed, thinking about all the neat presents I would be getting the next day. I thought about all the toys, pretty clothes, candy, and other cool stuff kids get for Christmas. I discovered that by thinking about all this caused me to gain no progress in getting to sleep. So, I pushed the excitement aside and soon fell asleep. That morning, I woke up, and like every normal kid, realized that it was Christmas morning and jumped out of bed as fast as I could. I then ran to my parents' bedroom, where they were still sound asleep, and woke them up shouting, "Wake up! It's Christmas!" They sleepily crawled out of bed and told me to go on to the living room. While they went to the bathroom to help themselves wake up, I was anxiously waiting near the tree, staring at all my presents. I knew I couldn't open a present until my parents told me I could, so I just tried to guess what I had gotten. I then walked over to the couch and sat impatiently. At that moment, in front of me, I saw the apparition of a 15-year-old girl holding one of my presents. She then held it out to me and said, "Here you go. Open it." When I told her no, she put it back under the tree. At that moment, my parents walked into the room and she disappeared. When I told my parents what I saw, they of course didn't believe me. When I was 9 years old, I'm 30 now, I could not get to sleep on Christmas Eve because I was excited about presents and wondered if my parents had anything to do with the gifts that I received from Santa the year before. That night it was hot because the heater was on. I lived in Texas, so I got thirsty. Also, I was wanting to spy. I got out of bed and cracked open my door to make sure no one was out in the living room, so that way I could get something to drink. When I opened the door, I saw someone bent over. Then he stood up. It was Santa Claus, dressed in the red and white getup. Something strange was that I could see the Christmas lights from the tree shining through him. He was taking the stockings down off the mantle and placing them on the coffee table. When he started to turn around to put the next stocking on the table, I closed the door and jumped into bed. The next morning, I woke up and told my sister what I had seen. I told her where he had put the stockings. When we went into the living room, the stockings were where I said he had put them. We both turned and looked at each other and froze for a moment. From then on, I've told everyone that I believe in Santa. Although my mother would not say she believed in ghosts, she would not deny their existence either. As she put it, just in case one is listening and decides to give proof. However, she was not without her own experiences, as the following account shows. It was Christmas Eve, 1946, in the projects of Chicago. The twins were about 8 years old, and my oldest brother was only 2. My mother was saddened that there would be no Santa for them that year. Although the Great Depression has ended, America is still struggling. My dad brought home $15 a week. Almost $9 would be set aside to pay the rent in their small apartment. That didn't leave much left to live on for a family of 5, and every penny was earmarked just for survival. She had been waiting on my father to return from work so that she could go to the grocery store to pick up a few much-needed items. Mrs. Bowman, a neighbor lady, knocked on the door with a message from my father. He would be home later than expected, and she should go without him. My parents didn't have a phone. She even offered to sit the kids, as it was getting dark and my mother had to hurry to get there before the store closed. In those days, stores closed early on Christmas Eve. Winter can be bitter in Chicago, and the wind bit my mother's bare legs and sliced through her old coat as she walked the 4 blocks to the store. My mom always wore dresses no matter what. She was nearly frozen as she approached the store's parking lot. She felt something wrap itself around her ankle. Looking down and pulling it off, she saw it was a $5 bill. $5. A small fortune in those days. She looked about for its owner, someone who might have dropped it, even though she was sorely tempted to just cram it into her pocket. Then she saw the man, standing nearly hidden in the shadows. "Excuse me," she said, approaching him, "but have you lost something?" He took a step from the shadows. She was struck by the fact that although he didn't appear dressed for the cold, as he wore only a jacket, he didn't appear cold. He smiled at her, the most beautiful smile she has ever seen. "Yes, ma'am. $5 to be exact." "Then this is yours." She extended the bill towards him. "Keep it. Get the kids something nice." My mother's jaw fell open. The second half of what he said wouldn't hit her until later. "Are you sure? It's an awful lot." But the man had already turned, walking off, cutting across a section of fresh snow. "Thank you. Merry Christmas," she called after him as she assumed he disappeared into the darker shadows. But, and she is adamant about this, he left no prints in the snow where he walked. She went and took a good look when she finished shopping, but her Christmas miracle didn't end there. Inside on a long table was an assortment of plastic toys. She quickly chose 2 plastic dress-me dolls and a red fire truck. The owner of the store was working the counter, and he placed some candy into her bag, telling her to hush when she objected. He knew our family, and wanted to be allowed to spoil those babies just a little. My mother says that never had a full bag of groceries felt so light to carry on the walk home. Back home, Mrs. Bowman left and returned with some fabric scraps she thought were big enough to create outfits for the dolls with. Soon, they had the kids fed and put down, and they busied themselves with sewing tiny dresses until my father came home, lugging behind him a small tree. The reason he was late was he had the chance to work for a friend at a Christmas tree lot, and this one was left over. The friend let him have it and paid him a whopping 50 cents to boot. You can say coincidence and folks being kind all you want, my mother would say when telling the story. But you tell me, what kind of man could possibly know that I had kids and leave no prints in the snow, except for a Christmas spirit? It was 1961, on Christmas Eve. We were living in Boardman, Ohio. My bedroom was at the end of the house. I went to sleep on Christmas Eve. I don't know what time it was, but I know it was very late when I suddenly woke up. I was staring at my bedroom door, which was cater corner from my bed. The door slowly opened, and I squinted my eyes shut just a bit, because I didn't want my mother or father to catch me up in the middle of the night. There was a night light in the hallway, and one behind the dresser in my room, so there was some light. I was so astonished, however, at who opened the bedroom door. I found myself looking at a man dressed in a red suit. He had a white trim around his waist, like fur, a long white beard, and was wearing a Santa hat. He had red pants and black boots. If I closed my eyes, I could still see Santa standing in my door. It made such an impression on me. He stood there and looked at me for a few seconds, then closed the door. I pulled the blankets over my head for a while. I was so scared. Finally, I looked out, but no one was there. The next day, I asked my mother if she or my father had been out of bed the previous night. My mother said no. In fact, my sister was only 4 months old, and my mother said she had slept through the night for the first time, and neither of my parents had gotten up. They were tired and they both slept. So, I don't know who or what looked in my bedroom that night. I told my mother I saw Santa, and she got really mad at me and told me that I did not. But I know what I saw. It was Santa Claus. And I swear this story did happen. I know I wasn't dreaming. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring not even a mouse. The traps were all set by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would step there. The children were all nestled snug in their beds, while nightmares of body parts danced in their heads. And Mama with her hatchet, and I with my axe, had just settled down for a little nightcap, when out on the lawn there arose such a clatter. I sprang from my chair to see what made the splatter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and ripped through the sash. The moon on the breast of the blood-stained snow gave a hideous glow to objects below. When, what to my wandering eye should appear, the watchman was dead, with a knife in his ear. There, on the lawn, knelt a man rather thick. The blood on his coat told me he was Saint Nick. More rapid than vultures he sprang to his feet. This zombified Santa was hungry for meat.
Where are the children? I want them now. Bring them down to me, you ugly fat cow. On time and impatient I've come to your home. I hunger for brains, and I'm not alone.
As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, a legion of demons flew down from the sky. And up to the housetop this evil took roost, with red beady eyes and long pointy tooth. And then, in a heartbeat, I heard on the roof the digging and pawing of each demon hoof. As I drew in my hand and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came down with a growl. He was dressed all the hair of the dead he had skinned, and his clothes were bloodstained from both women and men. With a bundle of cutlery hung on his back, he grabbed for a knife and began his attack. His eyes, they stared through me, his smile freaking scary. His nose was all wrinkled like an old rotten cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow. He slashed at my leg, and I fell to the floor. The stump of my limb he held tight in his teeth, and the blood seeped from it to white tile beneath. He had a cruel face, and some blood in his beard. His expression was empty. For my life I now feared. He was ugly and evil, a sick little elf. And I knew things must change, for my kids and myself. With my leg now missing, my wife surely dead, I pushed from the floor and kicked Nick in the head. He spoke not a word, but went fell straight on his back, and all the traps sprung with a thunderous snap. Laying there, writhing, right where he fell, this bastard passed right through the doorway of hell. The demons then vanished. My children were safe. I sat there crying, beginning to faint. But before I passed out, I screamed with all my might, "Scary Christmas to all!"
And to all a good fright.
Here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, down Santa Claus Lane. Blitzen and blitzen and all his reindeer moving on the rain. Bells are ringing, children sing, all is merry and bright. And go stop and say your prayers, 'cause Santa Claus comes tonight. Here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane. He's got a bag of filled with toys for the boys and girls again. Hear those sleigh bells jingle jangle, what a beautiful sight. Jumping back there up your head, 'cause Santa Claus comes tonight. Here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane. Only know you just the same. Santa knows that we're God's children. That makes everything right. Fill your hearts with the Christmas cheer, 'cause Santa Claus comes tonight. Here comes Santa Claus. Right down Santa Claus Lane. He'll come around and the times ring up and it's Christmas morn again. Peace on earth will come to all if we just follow the line. Fill your hearts with Christmas cheer, 'cause Santa Claus comes tonight. If we just follow the line, let's give thanks to the Lord of all. 'Cause Santa Claus comes tonight. 'Cause Santa Claus comes tonight. Let's give thanks to the Lord of all. 'Cause Santa Claus comes tonight. Tonight. Tonight.
If it's fear you're after,